Higgins for your remarks, and we'll now move to the Q&A portion of our hearing. I'm going to yield myself 5 minutes. Ms. Jackson, you've been an advocate, a strong voice for working families and middle-class folk. Listening to Mr. Higgins say that the Inflation Reduction Act has done its job, which suggests that inflation has been reduced and the lives of Americans are better today than they were prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, the spending, the taxes, the regulations, and this energy policy of the Biden-Harris administration. I assume you engage and listen to middle class and working families. Do you think they would agree with Mr. Higgins? What do you think their response would be to listen to his statement, it's done its job, and my colleague and friend's statement that we should celebrate this record of energy success?
None of the people that I talk to are celebrating. In fact, I can tell you right now that most of the people that I talk to are not even living paycheck to paycheck. They're living paycheck to Wednesday, and they have to borrow, and they're already underwater before they can even get to the next week. I talked to a mother this week who said to me she has to work a full-time job, pick up her kids, then put them in a car, drive around for another 6 and 8 hours with small kids under the age of 5 because she cannot afford the standard of living that she had before all of these green new policies were pushed on them. She barely gets 3 hours of sleep. And this is not an unusual statement. Everybody is feeling the burden of high energy prices, high food costs. Nobody feels like they're getting ahead. Everybody has depleted their savings. They're underwater in debt from credit cards, and they still feel like nobody's listening to them. My think tank is a conservative think tank, but 90% of the phone calls I get are from liberals asking me for help because they're hurting. And it seems like no policy is great enough in terms of saving the planet that doesn't hurt working class families. So all of the burden is being carried by low income and middle class families.
Sounds like a disconnect to me from what I'm hearing from some of my colleagues
It's not
and the reality on the
out
ground.
of the planet.
Let me move to Mr. Epstein because this is a sincere issue that I've mulled over ever since I read the Green New Deal plan and what I believe is a very extreme response to a very modest change in the climate in terms of temperature. The premise, it seems like, from my colleagues is as follows. Climate change is significant. The consequences are catastrophic and in the near term, and we need massive government intervention or we're going to destroy the planet. Therefore, it is the greatest existential crisis. Never once in my entire career at a town hall anywhere has anybody raised the issue of the threat of climate. They've raised a lot of threats, a lot of them that Ms. Jackson mentioned, like this inflation tax that is regressive and hurting working people more than any single issue. They can't even think beyond that because they're trying to survive, which is why we have the highest consumer debt in history, the highest credit card debt in history. It's real. The facts support that. Is this the right way to, is that premise accurate? Is that the right way to frame this? Because they may argue, yes, it's painful, yes, prices are going up, but we're saving the planet, right, and we're saving America from this existential threat. What do you say, Mr. Edson?
So I hope I get asked more about this because I only have a little bit of time. But so I think the key to thinking about this is the premise is that fossil-fueled climate change has been catastrophic so far and will be apocalyptic going forward. And to evaluate predictions about the future, I always look at their track record. And it is false that fossil fueled climate change is catastrophic so far, and we can measure this very clearly because we can measure how many people die from climate-related disasters, and that number not only hasn't increased, it has decreased by a factor of 50, so a 98% decrease over the last century. And the basic mechanism is very simple. Any new climate challenges that have been caused by rising GHG emissions, and I think there are some, particularly heat-related, they've been overwhelmed by our increased resilience, or what I call climate mastery. So the challenges, whatever they have been, are trivial compared to the increase in mastery. And if you try to think about the future of climate and you don't recognize that we're getting better and better at dealing with all kinds of climate disasters and climate challenges, then you can't think about this issue intelligently. So people say climate change is real. Yes, we do have an impact on climate, but equating that with climate catastrophe is wrong. And then saying that the US, which is 1/7 of the world's emissions and has no control over global emissions, except for legitimate innovation, not government dictated nonsense, but legitimate innovation like a nuclear, to say that we're gonna save the planet, A, the planet doesn't need saving, and B, it's a farce that you're gonna do it by forcing people to use a bunch of junk and then restricting our ability. So I consider the whole IRA just ridiculously dishonest. I think that if they were honest, they would say, hey, everyone needs to be poor to avoid climate catastrophe. And if they said that, I would take it seriously.
I'm gonna cut you off there, but I appreciate the answer. I'm gonna now give my ranking member 5 minutes for Q&A.